There is so much good we can do when we get it right with AI.
It's less about the technology, it's more about the readiness, it's more about our trusted relationship and helping people navigate it.
We need to stay curious. We need to at least, ask ourselves, how can we apply this? So just going back to the question, I think what we see that are the gaps, especially between what is coming out in terms of the research and then what we see every day is that not necessarily within like the business context does every solution need to be AI, right? And this goes back to what Jesslyn was talking about. There is, always like this AI and this AI hype. And then when you go through and you look at the reviews, you kind of say, okay, you peel back the layers and you're saying, oh, this is actually what they're referring to. There is a big gap between, what is coming out of like the research and what is actually applicable to kind of like our day-to-day lives and sort of like the business as usual. But having said that, I think one of the things that we do need to do is we need to stay curious. And every time, we see something cool, we see something neat come out, we need to at least, ask ourselves, how can we apply this? And, just be able to have that curiosity and ask ourselves, is this something that we can use to, make our lives easier? Is this something that we can use to, reduce the toil of like, our day to day? And, if you can kind of imagine the future where it's possible, then this is where you should actually say, oh yeah, let's give that a try. In terms of the actual, sort of like training the algorithm or even developing the algorithm, that is just a small part of sort of like the AI journey. The rest of the AI journey is, understanding how to actually deploy it in a responsible and ethical way. And sometimes also understanding how to actually essentially affect or like touch like physical systems where we do see, AI could make a difference. So when I am talking about that, I'm talking about things like HVAC, which is, heating, ventilation, and air conditioning. So that is very much different, when you're trying to control something like HVAC. That is very much different than just making a prediction and then acting upon the prediction. So I think one of the things that we talked about is MCP. Perhaps that is something that we can actually, use to be able to touch and control physical things. And that is a definite possibility. And that, touching upon some of the sustainability things I'm going to talk about, that actually may make a difference in sort of like our goal to be a more sustainable society.
Yeah, I think like when we all think about AI and the hype, the difference is going to be interesting and it's empowering for business leaders because it's less about looking into the market, like what can this tech do for me? It's actually imagine if you knew what good would look like in the context of your business. So rather than looking at disrupting use cases, we're often, I think, to the point shared around curiosity, the power with curiosity now that I love. So our team are working with TELUS, supporting companies who are interested to uncover use cases where we can help in any way to which will be to the outcome, not what would the technology fit. So imagine a world where three of the most key essential processes in your business to detail that everyone's in the business doing every day, and things not just like how much it costs, but how many people, what's the error rates, and just understanding the process currently. That's likely looking at that as like, okay, if we understood this 50 full-time employee, 60-day backlog, 20% error rate, really challenging process, like that's a really interesting criteria to share with folks like our teams within TELUS or even tools you're going to test with. Because then you can actually look at like, how do we frame this up as the opportunity? So imagine finding those are a lot of fun. And when I think of the most exciting parts that we see is often showcasing where someone might come in with a curiosity or a monologue of what they hear from the business. So let's say we meet an IT leader and they say, hey, the business leaders, they need route optimization. Do you have a product to sell us? And we're like, okay, just imagine a world where we have the best route optimization tool in the world. What does it do for you? Is it 1% better fuel economy? Is it happier employee? Like, oh, that's $100 million problem. Very interesting. And I think that we've not only approached setting the criteria of like how I can have our engineers support a use case that's useful to the end customer, but also like give something that's very concrete to an outcome that our engineers look at and say, oh my God, I'm inspired. I want to learn the new tools. I want to get involved with the data. I want to bring stories forward. And when we think about our team as engineers within TELUS on outcomes like this, it's less about implementing the technology as the success criteria. It's more about managing the understanding and the experience toward the change. Because when you're innately considering AI use cases, let's say that's the curiosity, you might be looking at it for efficiency or reducing cost. And like subtracting in business, we all know it's very hard. Everything that exists has a champion. So I think when we think about enabling people, having approaches in change management, like Brad, you covered a bunch of this already, but around like the people and the playbook and like finding the internal champions where the value is has been super effective. It's been a lot of fun. I'm covering lots of things there.
Oh boy, that's a big one. So I think we've been very fortunate to be positioned as a team focused on data and trust. Often compliance, governance, all of those things come with a bit of baggage and perhaps the perception that we are here to slow things down or to question or say no. What is it, like chief privacy officer is the CPO or the CP no? It takes so much work, I think, around the relationships and the team building. So being connected, having that by design mindset, so recognizing that there are patterns and ways to embed the important aspects of trust and responsible AI right into the product from the get-go instead of being more reactive. So you have to have that enablement focus. I mentioned earlier our team works on the data enablement plan, and that's very intentional. It's not a impact assessment, although it is secretly, but very much focused on how to do things. So not whether we can or we can't. And that question really goes back to the business and is very much related to the choice about embedding AI, right? Like that's an intentional decision. It has to add value. And for that culture of innovation to be successful, you need to bring your teams on board in a way that they're going to see this technology adding value. And there are so many bad examples of where AI has not been developed with that human-centric kind of people-first mindset. And so having that conversation, that engagement, both with your teams and your customers and the communities that will be impacted by this technology are really critical for helping inform and shape what those design principles are that we use. So alongside our work in helping the business identify requirements for managing risk, we also do a lot of work on AI literacy and having education to teach people how to use the technology and how to use it well and see where it works well, doing the kind of testing that you might see in Fortify, providing them examples and scenarios where they get to use AI. The coolest thing I think about how Fuel iX got started is that it was built in partnership. It was built out of a desire to create that opportunity for people to innovate and to try and experiment with a range of evolving guardrails. But it was about learning how to use the technology and seeing where it worked well and understanding where it didn't. And so as much as this is a technology governance discussion in my team, it's so much about making it make sense for people. And I think that's the key to really handling the challenges and the risks that come up. And I think at the end of the day, this technology is in the hands of people, and people generally want to add value and make things work beneficially. So that's what we bank on.
Yeah, that's a tough question. I think, potentially that there could be conflicts, and, the biggest conflicts could come in the form that, the rapid adoption of AI and the bigger and bigger models that we are developing and training now, could be contributing to like one of the most pressing issues that we're facing one of the most pressing issues. I don't know what's the most pressing anymore, but one of the most pressing issues that we could be facing as a society, which is climate change. Notice I don't say that there's an increase or a decrease. I'm just saying that there's a change, which is making our weather and climate systems much less predictable. And oftentimes, when there are adverse weather and climate incidents, they are much more catastrophic. So there could be some conflicts in that. We're reading things about how there's the drought in Texas is being made worse by like the data centers that have been, built there. But I think one of the things that we have the power of doing is being able to use AI to be able to help combat some of these climate change through sustainability, through things such as, being able to I go back to the HVAC example, to be able to optimize, for example, our HVAC usage. So one of the things that we could do is to actually use compressor cooling, which is what you usually think of when you think of HVAC, a little bit less, because while it's very efficient, it is also very energy intensive. So one of those things is to be able to do that. And then also the other things that we can be using AI to do is to actually monitor and understand our environment, especially in these times of climate change where we just don't have the data. We just don't have the historic data of, things like, are the leaves on the trees supposed to turn color at this time or later? Or in other cases, such as in agriculture, I'm sure we're aware that, some of our crops are very temperature sensitive, and one of the largest cash crops in Canadian agriculture is canola, which is a cold weather crop. So with generally the climate becoming warmer, this actually affects when people should be planting their canola crops and also when they should be harvesting. So all of these things, we can actually, use AI to help us understand and help us predict and mitigate some of these sustainability issues that have been coming up. So I think we should be aware of both sides of the coin.
When I think of what's going to make me the most excited is organizations ready in software to start adopting some of the parts that are most important to them. So I've been asked this question before, like, all right, Jesse, like, if you had a magic wand, what would be your favorite solution? And I'd be like, well, I'd love to put the magic wand in the customer's hand. I'd love to actually go through what great looks like for them versus again, it's hard to educate someone on MCP when they may be super busy, the analogy of a swivel chair of every business is looking at one tool, shifting back to email, doing all these things. And I think it's just the focus of in simple things. It's not about building with AI. AI's often opened the door, but it's some of the interesting approaches of just solving problems, finding solutions, and building trust toward them. And that's the thing that I get most excited about. I've used this analogy, as a founder for the last many years now, when we leave a relationship meeting, we get to understand them a bit more. There's nothing more fun than having this, we have a $50 million value roadmap for an end group across 5 use cases that we know very well, they understand, and it's been one that if we can represent the journey to a future state, it's able to go through compliance, through safety, through awareness of our data, and the approach is super impactful. So when I think of that as the journey that we're on, that now I'm on now within TELUS, and being able to see and get exposed to lots of different organizations, data, different problems, very exciting. And when I think of just the technology, it's also avoiding the things that we know will fail. The imagining of if the technology was the best solution for a process in an organization that isn't ready to adopt it. Imagine you own a bunch of vet clinics and you have this new scheduler and you lay off or change the staffing approach for that workflow, and it works for a month really well. You get like maybe 1 or 2 more meetings or ability to do a little bit more capacity, but the moment that fails, they will rip that out so fast and put a human back in the process. So I think like the appetite for us it's less about the technology, it's more about the readiness, it's more about our trusted relationship and helping people navigate it that I'm excited to continue on. And the technology's just making people more excited to approach problems that typically they wouldn't have been able to approach before.
Thank you for the question. Okay, so with respect to TELUS's posture, as I sort of hinted at, we started working on Fuel iX like back in 2023. As soon as ChatGPT was released, we knew we did not want to be the organization saying, do not use this. It's been about go use this, and how you use this is our guidance and policies, which evolved. I think we're on like version 11 of our guidance on generative AI. And ultimately led to the creation of Fuel iX. So we have this kind of walled garden, which is model agnostic, allows people to get access to the coolest tools, but in a way that is controlled, has that enterprise policy layer, gives us the flexibility to enable experimentation, try different things. And we have a really awesome engineering team who is on top of what is happening in this space and making sure that those tools are in the hands of our teams as soon as we can get them through our really rapid DEP process, data enablement plan. And that's, I think, because we have this alignment around making it easy to do the right thing with both our data and trust office, but our engineering, our product, and our business teams, so that it is very much focused on giving them access to what we know they want to be able to use. In the industry, I feel like there is a very mixed set of postures, and I go back to Brett's research about the fact that maybe people have put out policies saying that you can't use this, but the reality is these tools are going to find ways to be used. So it's about where you enable them, I think, and the guidance that goes alongside that. And then the technical guardrails to do things like monitoring what types of tools are being used by your team members to be able to ultimately be accountable for them. So that is where we're at in a nutshell, and I think we need more of that.
And to top up on for mid-market, I think generally the answer is there's not much. People are just getting by. They're like, oh, maybe people are using this. I don't know. Up to this point, that's the way it's been. I think that's starting to change, but it'll take a little while. It's no different than some of the other technologies we came along. A lot of us probably remember when mobile came in, can use your iPhone at work, all these other types of things. That was a problem initially, but then later it wasn't. And I think a lot of it's policy right now, but I will say that one of the things that we've learned is it's not sufficient just to give them a tool. If the tool isn't as good as the stuff they're used to using, they're still going to use their other stuff. And even if you try to block the URLs and all those things, doesn't matter. They've got phones, they've got all these other devices. And most of your employees want to do their job better, either because they have pride in it, they don't want to lose their job, whatever it is. So if they have something at their disposal, they'll do it. And I think just to start, you need policies, so you need to tell people what to do. You need to provide tools. You need to stay on top of it. But I would say that mid-market in particular is really far behind. Okay, I'll do this. If Jesse wants to top up on it, that's a good one. So MCP, you think of it as like an integration layer that makes it easier for all your systems to talk together. What are we excited about? What's TELUS going to do? There are a couple questions embedded in there. So the first thing is we all have lots of systems. We have them, most of them are SaaS systems. Someone else provides those to us. It's very hard to get information from one to the other, but every one of us uses more than one of those systems in almost every task that we do, all right? This is a big problem. So what we haven't had is a way to unify that. Anybody remember like SAP and ERP systems? Like that was supposed to solve the problem for everybody. It's like brings everything together. These things were terrible, right? They were great systems of record. and they would enforce processes and make sure that your data was right, but like no one could use them. It was too slow, they were cumbersome, so then what did we do? We had systems of engagement that came up. It's all these other things that basically just hit other systems with their data, but made it easier for your business to be successful with that. And so when we look at generative AI and basically a conversational interface or other types of things, we're like, they have really good overlays in order to pull things to the forefront, which touch multiple systems and allow you to could just be a single query, but you need to query 3 systems in order to get the right answer, as opposed to go to 3 different things. Like those things are really important right now. The other is, there is a lot of process and task automation that you can kick off automatically. You could just ask for something, it can happen. There's triggers that are going to be happening, whether it be sensors or data that comes in that is a certain trigger, you're going to kick off other things. We've had this for other types of things, like TELUS with network optimization for the telecom network and those types of things. We've not had this for things that deal with processes that deal with words, predominantly. And this is the thing that we think about very often is words. How do we process that very effectively across multiple systems, solve those processes? Because today it's like people with big brains. And then the other thing with MCP is we've had some challenges of integrating words with numbers on a consistent basis. And MCP is going to be a much more effective way for us to do that consistently, as opposed to sort of the way it happens today when if you try to use an LLM with numbers, it's better than it used to be, but definitely check your work. Do you want to top up on this, Jesse?
Yeah, I'll be super concise. So if you think about the example of high volume workflow, or let's say we have a priority workflow, and let's say you have one today that involves 3 people or types of expertise areas in a business. So one being financial analysis, let's say marketing, and maybe like another area. So the example of let's say you have 3 of those human beings and they're a 25-year veteran from Goldman Sachs that has expertise in yada, yada, yada. If you think of those workflows, it's the example of using your own data, establishing in the workflow and providing the best approach in the workflow in the business and moving the context through where sub-agents could be communicating and doing the work with that expertise, with a trained component of the data that you as an organization are giving it, with the context of your business. For example, all the financial data or history of certain workflows or certain pricing or quotes. We've used things like that in automating quotes intelligently, faster. But the aspects of the parts that Brett shared is just being able to take that such a powerful dimension into very advanced, complex processes.
And one other thing I'll just mention as a top up is when we talk about generative AI or AI in general, people usually think about productivity, which is great. There is a creative element there that we try to drive through there as well, that it actually helps people come up with better ideas. But there's something you probably haven't heard a lot related to AI, and that's collaboration. And we really believe, whether it's MCP or some other UI affordances, that there's a way for us to help the people work more efficiently together. And sometimes that's just being able to provide access to different information and systems like we talked about, but also to be able to share information more effectively. We've got all these tools, and yet how often do you have to wait and you're like, the one thing I need to know, that person's out of office, right? And so these are the types of things that we're looking at and we're saying, hey, how can we drive real agility into organizations so that there's really none of the systems and processes we have today from the analog world slow us down. All right, so I think that's probably what we want to do to wrap it up.